Müller grew up in Germany in the early part of the 19th century, a period when the church was in decline and religious faith at a low ebb.
He was born in a little town called Kroppenstedt, which belonged to the Empire of Prussia during this time.
George Müller lived the life of a playboy, spending his time drinking, gambling or chasing the ladies.
But revival was just around the corner, as Müller was to find out for himself when, as a theological student at Halle in eastern Germany, he started going to meetings in the home of a Christian businessman.
When George Müller came to Christ, that was in 1825.
Müller returned to London a different man, a man of vision and passion, fired up by Grove's experience of living by faith.
I'm fascinated by the idea of being more adventurous in trusting God.
The cold, damp and unsanitary conditions of pre-Victorian Britain meant children were highly vulnerable to diseases such as pneumonia and cholera. They nearly always died. When Müller arrived in Bristol, he could not help but be moved by the plight of these orphan children. Charles Dickens' heartrending story of the young orphan lad Oliver Twist awakened the conscience of an indifferent nation. But the conscience of George Müller had already been awakened.
I intend, with God's help and provision, to open a children's home. There will be no going to man for funds or provisions, either by prayer requests or sermons or literature. We will rely on God alone.
2 years later, in June 1849, the new orphanage opened its doors to 300 children. Over the next 21 years, 4 more homes were built on Ashley Down, providing shelter, food, welfare and love for over 2,000 orphans.
In his lifetime, George Müller raised the equivalent of $180 million without making any appeals or using the fundraising techniques so many organizations depend on today. And he spent it on the care and welfare of thousands of Bristol's street kids who were regarded as nothing but vermin in those days. He did it to demonstrate to an unbelieving public and doubting Christians that God is real and can be trusted. The legacy of what he began nearly 180 years ago continues to this day.
George Müller cared for 10,000 children during his lifetime, and in fact 18,500 children were cared for by the work over the years, and we have the records of every boy and girl here.
There are those who well remember their childhood years in a Müller's home. Their lives would have been very much different had it not been for the faith and vision of George Müller. His soul has long since departed, but his message remains. God is real and can be trusted.